Good afternoon. Today, I'm going to review the GTA Remaster Trilogy on the Switch. The so-called GTA Trilogy Definitive Edition released on November 11th at 10 a.m. Awkwardly, some people on PlayStation could get it early and other people had to wait, like me. I had to wait until 10 a.m. on the 11th. It was such a... I've never experienced a video game release like that, and it was... awkward's the best way to describe it. It's available now for every single platform, besides, of course, a toaster and a smart fridge, though I'm assuming that the former will naturally come shortly. PC players, however, have experienced a host of issues, main among them being the inability to play their $60 experience this weekend, as the Rockstar launcher not only ran into issues, but had the definitive editions pulled suddenly from its library, which Rockstar handwaves away with a simple oopsie, we're working on it. Jordan Midler of VGC already put out a well-formulated and in-depth exploration of the Switch GTA Trilogy Remaster, which I will link below. I thought, as an avid GTA fan, one who grew up alongside the series and has dedicated much of his time to Rockstar creations, would give my own personal and expressive look at each of these games, their pros and cons, as well as give a basic rundown on how I feel after about 45 days with them running on Nintendo's hardware. Let's dive into it, shall we? Given the already elongated list of cons, I thought it best we start off with the pros. Get our toesies wet before we get into the nitty-gritty and main concerns surrounding not just the Switch port, but also the overall development behind these remasters. For starters, it does look beautiful at times, specifically both Vice City and San Andreas and sunny parts, right? Like when you take a turn and it's just the sunrise is happening. There's something to say about the lighting. It's clear lighting and environment both were taken into heavy consideration as focal points for enhancement by the team behind the Definitive Edition, which we'll get into. Gross G Games has a track record, which we will discuss later. A stunning visual enhancement I notice most is within the explosions. I know it's strange to talk about that, but hear me out. Although looking kind of out of place at certain times, the explosions of cars or grenades are something to really revel in. It's clear that they put a lot of effort into them, but, always a but, they come marred by the pitiful fire effects, which look almost too two-dimensional and pulls you right out of the immersion. There's one mission in San Andreas where you have to, light the house on fire. You meet your first girlfriend, too. It's a pretty dope mission, given to you by the one and only Samuel L. Jackson. That whole mission felt so weird and off because you're, running through this house with the fire hydrant, and the fire doesn't look like it's fire. It just, I can't explain it. It just doesn't look good. Also a bit off topic here, but I want to stay on the pros for a sec. The game has really quick and snappy saving, something that PS2, PS3 ports, PS4 ports did not have. Once you save, it's bang. It's even on the Switch, it's bang. But there's still bad loading times, so we'll talk about that. One of the most welcome changes comes in the form of an adapted weapon wheel for all three experiences. No longer do players have to cycle through every single weapon to find the one they need in each scenario. You simply hold down the left bumper and toggle the pistol and bore or rocket launcher with the right stick. This also goes for the radio stations and vehicles. It's certainly a redefining aspect for these experiences, but not something that should have people running out to buy them at a moment's notice. Cheats do still work, however, they are mapped to their original inputs on Switch, so say you want to use the full health, body armor, and $25,000 cheat. On PS2, it's R1, R2, L1, X, left, down, right, up. On Switch, while X is mapped to the A button because of how the system works, on PlayStation, the A button is where the circle button would be. B still functions as the X input when it comes to cheats on Switch. So, you're still using your muscle memory. You're still utilizing that muscle memory built up from years of acquiring the Hydra or, weapons, right? You know it. So it works, but it just feels incredibly weird doing it on buttons that seemingly should not match up. I didn't test all the cheats available for each game, but most vehicles, guns, and health codes still function appropriately. Previous lead editor of The Gamer, Kirk McKean, did a fantastic interview in USA Today with producer Rich Rosado, underscoring which cheats are still left out of this version, as well as pointing out how the studio went about delivering upon this remaster, so give both his articles a good read. It's linked in the description, of course. But out of all the pros that come with re-entering these reimagined classics, a highlight for me personally is the mobility factor inherent in playing them on the Switch. Initiating a gang war in the palm of my hands who could ask for something more, right? It's reinvigorating, like, for me, personally. There's really nothing quite like it. Playing both Vice City and GTA 3 specifically not only brings me back to the very, very old days of their release windows, but likewise gives me flashbacks of the PSP classics everyone tends to forget. Vice City Stories and Liberty City Stories, the former of which is still arguably among the most heralded in the series. Vice City Stories, for some reason, everyone loves it, and so do I. Vance and, his brother, they're a great duo. It's a great game. Highly recommend it, but I don't know if you want to bust out the PSP for it. Even so, despite its mobility, these games still have immense jitteriness and lag, most prominent in San Andreas. They shouldn't be groundbreaking discovery, though. If anyone thought San Andreas alone was going to run smoothly on Switch, they were in for a rude awakening, especially with the graphical improvements. Though slight in some areas, there were bound to be hiccups here and there on Nintendo's architecture, as well as necessary cutbacks in the games themselves. This is all not to say, however, that the flaws should be overlooked. Grove Street Games, an outsourced studio that has done several different Grand Theft Auto ports, utilized Unreal Engine alongside the original 3 games' code to basically bring the definitive edition to life, with the same art style, direction, and feel from their counterparts of yesteryear on a whole new level of fidelity. However, this has left in the games many of the main issues that plagued them all the way back when they first released. Artificial intelligence was also used to upscale the visuals, which likewise has left some parts of each map now flat and missing its previous allure. For instance, the top fun, top bun issue that we've run into. There's a bunch of issues wrong with Vice City as well. If you go into the mall, you're going to see the AR, which is supposed to be air guitars. It's just one of many, many issues with just simple environmental concerns that you'll see in your playthrough. For instance, the camera in certain scenarios is incredibly janky. In the Hydra, it's practically impossible to do any real dogfighting, as you can't maintain the camera angle anywhere aside from straight ahead. There's also already been one video going viral of San Andreas wherein the player is looking backward while driving an ATV, which leads to a perfectly memeable moment of CJ staring head full and expressionless into the camera as it jankily twists about the screen. This has also led to a pretty hilarious meme of Kanye West. While mission checkpoints were an incredibly nice touch alongside the weapon wheel, it's unfortunate to see that not many of these mission checkpoints have a well thought out placement. For instance, in the OG Loke mission, I died following the entire motorbike chase sequence, which takes around 5 to 7 minutes. Thus, I had to restart the entire thing again. It's as if this restart option, like many of these slight improvements, were merely tacked on without any thought in mind, so as to say they were actually was thought and care put into these remasters. Just doesn't feel like that's the case. If Rockstar really wanted to prove themselves to the fans, then why weren't there any extra quality of life improvements? Like the camera itself, the controls are still incredibly dysfunctional, like their early 2000 counterparts. Load times can take up to a good 20 seconds, specifically when leaving Carl's house. Random pop-ins occur at times with cars, just appearing out of nowhere, causing collisions at the worst times. This all sounds incredibly nitpicky, but it's clear that very little quality assurance was done with these games. Take the character models as pure evidence. Michael, aka Legacy Kill, laments in his own video on the matter. They look hideous, and all the detail is just gone. It's true. The aptest showcase of this is in the yacht scene in Vice City, which features almost all of the main hitters you'll be meeting. The people who will be giving you missions throughout the game are all there, and they all look bad. They all look terrible. Every single character model just looks so poorly done. And this isn't simply a Switch problem. This is across the board. Even people playing on PS5 had frame rate issues, pointing out that maybe this definitive edition isn't so definitive after all. From poorly rendered ocean animations in GTA 3 to Vice City's FPS issues that make cars explode in 2 seconds flat, a breadth of concerns have already surmounted on the condition of these remakes. And even though they aren't seemingly as hyped as, say, Demon's Souls or Final Fantasy VII, some aren't as keen and knowledgeable about these varied experiences and the differences between a complete remake and a simple remaster. Take, for instance, the fact that Rockstar is coining it the Definitive Edition. Already, fans are drawing comparisons to Mafia Definitive Edition, itself a holistic ground-up remake. It's incredibly unfortunate, yet highly unlikely, that Rockstar would ever sink money into something as time-consuming and as resource-heavy as a full-on remake for these games. Yet it is what fans are more than not praying for. It's disturbing to see how Rockstar is treating its consumers, going after these modders, who are actually actively fixing their games more so than Rockstar is. Pretty much giving a middle finger to fans. And I understand, since Hot Coffee, people at Rockstar aren't exactly keen on the modding scene. They kind of were, their reputation was very much damaged because of Hot Coffee. I understand where Rockstar's standpoint is, but at the same time, if you want to see your fans protecting your game, protecting your investment, if you yourself, if you're Rockstar, if you want to protect your investment, you're going to want to listen to your fan base more so than you are going to come after them, attack them. which you're doing constantly. I can't sit here and say I'm not having fun with the game, because I am, even with the flaws. Us OGers certainly have a great deal of weight in terms of nostalgia that will sway biases tremendously. Yet even so, I can't deny that these games were either incredibly rushed or downright money pumpers, with no real fan appreciation all baked into them. Specifically, San Andreas has been a huge time waster for me over the past several days since its release, but I also can't ignore the many glaring issues that are resplendent within it. The GTA Trilogy Definitive Edition's release has already been marred by a plethora of memeage and outrage. PC players are basically shit out of luck, locked out of their $60 investment over incompetency, of which will most certainly spell a host of refunded game bundles, yet mean very little to the cash cow empire that is Rockstar Games. I understand now that it's back online on the Rockstar launcher, everything's good, and people are playing it, but people are refunding it as well. A lot of people. And people are now comparing it to Cyberpunk, which I want to laugh at, I find hilarious, but at the same time it's not funny. Because these are games that mean a lot to me and a lot of other people. These are my childhood. I'll never forget getting pissed and screaming at the PlayStation 2, just slamming my controller on the ground, and my father runs into the room, and I'll never forget this moment. He didn't know how to operate the PlayStation, so the best he could do was press all these buttons and press the disc button. So he took the disc away, basically. He was like, "You're not playing this." He got super angry at me. These moments are baked into my brain. Because of San Andreas, I learned that gaming isn't just about collecting stuff. It isn't about just driving fast, right? San Andreas taught me that 3 entire, beautiful, detailed universes, cities, can be put into one exclusive experience, and you can have whatever dream you want become reality. San Andreas literally changed my life, and to see how Rockstar is treating it now, it's sad, especially with the feedback, right? The blowback, I should call it. It's a sad turn of events, really, as I was extremely excited for this release, not on the same level of Cyberpunk before it, obviously, but I was enthralled to revisit these beautifully intricate worlds through a whole new lens. But it's clear this is no love letter to the OG Grand Theft Auto community, nor is this even a recommended starting point for newcomers. Yeah, that's right. If you're planning on playing, or even purchasing the GTA Trilogy Definitive Edition for Switch, specifically for Switch, I wouldn't. And even if you are considering for other consoles, say PC, Xbox, PlayStation, if you're a diehard fan and you really, really want to enjoy the games, head back to their old ones. My advice would be to play the originals. Don't buy this new bullshit from Rockstar. In all, this was a failed experiment, one that undoubtedly meant nothing more than a few extra bills in Take-Two's coffers, and just a bit of time spent by outsourced development from a team that clearly can't do what they promise. Alas, at least some fans can revisit the experiences of yesteryear, even on handheld devices, which is nice, but at the end of the day, it's obvious to me that we need to stop giving in to FOMO and simply think twice before handing our bills to Rockstar. After all, don't they have more than enough money by now?